Hi everyone, Mr. Ambrose here with your daily dose of sonnets. Tonight we'll be taking a look at Shakespeare's sonnet number 15. As we know, Shakespeare has 154 sonnets in his series, and the first 17 are known as the procreation sonnets. In these sonnets, he's trying to convince the fair youth, a handsome young man, to marry and have children. Here at sonnet 15, we're near the end of the procreation sonnets. After sonnet 17, we'll see a shift toward different themes. But tonight, we're here to talk about Sonnet 15, the 15th of the sonnet series and the 15th of the procreation sonnets. As usual, we'll start with the reading of the sonnet, we'll do a brief analysis and commentary, and then I'll give you an assignment to work on for your homework, in which you'll be writing your own poem in Shakespeare style. Here we are, Sonnet 15. When I consider everything that grows, holds in perfection but a little moment, that this huge stage presenteth naught but shows whereon the stars in secret influence comment. When I perceive that men as plants increase, cheered and checked even by the selfsame sky, vaunt in their useful sap, at height decrease, and wear their brave state out of memory. Then the conceit of this inconstant stay sets you most rich in youth before my sight, where wasteful time debateth with decay, to change your day of youth to sullied night. And all in war with time for love of you, as he takes from you, I engraft you new. So in Sonnet 15, we have a comment on the nature of life and the nature of mortality. And this is a theme that we see time and time again in Shakespeare's sonnet series. This idea that one day we will die. And Shakespeare is really cognizant of this and brings this up a number of times throughout the series. He certainly does that at the forefront in this poem tonight. One of the things that Shakespeare constantly acknowledges in his poem is that the reason things are so beautiful on earth is because they are impermanent. And we certainly see him mention that in a number of different ways here in this poem. He likens men to plants, talking about how plants and trees grow and are beautiful, but then they decay and die. He points to a number of different natural imageries within the poem to talk about how this is beautiful for the time being, but then it will decay inevitably. And a big reason that it is beautiful is because it is only here for a short amount of time. One of the things that stands out to me about this poem is a line about the nature of life. He likens life to a huge stage, and he said that that huge stage presenteth naught but shows. Basically, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. If you recognize that quote, that's another famous quote from Shakespeare, and that comes from a soliloquy in a play called As You Like It. So here Shakespeare is bringing in some themes that we see in his plays into the sonnet series. Again, and As You Like It, that famous line, all the world's a stage, and the men and women merely players, really echoes the line that we see here in Sonnet 15. This huge stage presenteth naught but shows. Basically, he's saying the same thing in each quote. He's saying that what we have here in our life, it's merely a show. It's merely superficial. And that show is going to end, as our life is impermanent. So as always, Shakespeare in the final rhyming couplet is going to bring in an ironic twist or a summary, and we certainly see that here in this poem. He concludes Sonnet 15 with, "And all in war with time for love of you, as he takes from you, I engraft you new." Throughout this poem, time is again personified with a capital T. Time representing the Grim Reaper, as we've seen in previous sonnets. This idea that time is inevitable, a force that will come no matter what you do in your life. That Grim Reaper with the scythe or the sickle is going to come for you. So this poem is reinforcing that conflict, that idea that time is always marching on. And at the end of the poem, Shakespeare is wondering, what can we do to prevent that marching on of time. And throughout the sonnet series, he's convinced the fair youth that the way to combat time is to marry and to have children. But here at the end of this poem, he throws out a new idea. In the previous 14 poems, he's always concluded with an idea of you need to get married, you need to have children in order to combat time, in order to retain your beauty. But here he throws out a different approach. He says, I engraft you new. Basically, I, the writer who will write about you in this poem, will make sure you remain youthful forever. So Sonnet 15 is pretty significant for a number of reasons. Chief among them, I think, is that we see this big shift. He's still encouraging the fair youth to procreate. He's still encouraging the fair youth to have children. But here he's introducing this new idea, that another way that we can immortalize the fair youth is to write poetry about him. And that is a way to keep his beauty going forever. And I guess it worked, since more than 400 years later, we're still talking about his beauty today. For homework tonight, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to find your favorite quote from Shakespeare. It can be a quote from a sonnet that we studied before. It could be a quote from a play you've read. You could just Google up famous Shakespeare quotes. The reason I'm asking you to do that is because the quote in this poem, this huge stage presenteth not but shows, sounds so similar to that famous quote from As You Like It. All the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. I'd like you to play around with this idea of finding a quote and then building a poem from that quote. We might call it found poetry, and we'll do more work with that in subsequent meetings. But go ahead and search up your favorite Shakespeare quotes. In your journal, you can start out by writing that quote at the top of the page, and then just see where it takes you, see where that quote inspires you to go. Try to use that quote to write a 14-line poem for homework tonight, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Until next time, take care.